You guys, welcome to the Can Church Be Healthy podcast, where a pastor and a therapist are getting curious about this experience that we call the church and the fruit that it's currently producing here in the western part of the world. My name is John Shirley, and I am with Tom Page. Tom, how are you
I'm
today?
good, buddy.
Yeah?
I'm happy to roll. I'm excited about this topic today.
Yeah. I am too, man. Today, we are talking about trauma. Now, look, man, if there was a buzzword,
No kidding,
that
it's
is,
loaded.
flying around in our culture everywhere right now, it would be this word, trauma, this concept, trauma. We're going to get into it today. We're going to be talking about it. I think from my perspective as a pastor, your perspective as a therapist. Obviously, you spend a lot of time in this lane.
Yeah, this is where I am. Yeah,
this is the lane, and I think. It's also where we are in the, man, when I think about the church right now, and I think about our culture's response to the church right now, what we're hearing and what we're seeing in headlines all the time, we're seeing how the church has been a traumatizing agent in people's lives.
It's sad.
Yeah.
And traumatic.
Yeah, I think that the very thesis of what we're going after here, particularly, we just said it, we're examining the fruit that is being produced by the church right now, and this word comes up quite a bit.
Yep.
And I know that as a professional, you spend hours with your clients in your office talking about the trauma that they have experienced in the church.
Yeah.
And so we're going to talk about it, conceptually today. I know you can't talk about your clients, specifically in this place, but you can talk about the themes that you encounter in your world. I think that this is really important because I, as a professional, as a pastor, I want to be a person that doesn't traumatize people. I would love for people to experience the Gathering Network, my church, for years and not be traumatized by it. I don't think that that's been the case, over our entire history. I think that there are people in the world right now that would have a painful memory or a painful story, related to their experience in our church. Not because I don't think we've done just, radical damage, but because human beings are here and we've related to one another. And
no overt shock trauma.
No.
Like more relational trauma.
Yeah, but there were times, where we just weren't acting as our best selves, probably because we just weren't mature, we weren't developed, we didn't have skills, and all of that added up to the fact that we weren't being as helpful as we could be, And so, this is something that I've tried my best, and I trying to create a system here in my church, in our church, where we mitigate, as much trauma as possible. But this thing is still human, and this thing is still human, and people are reacting to it the way that they react to it for a million different reasons. But I am learning as a leader and as a pastor that paying attention to people's trauma in their life, what they have encountered and experienced in life, is one of the most kind things that I can do. It's also one of the simplest things that I can do to just hold space, to be a good listener, in people's lives. Hey, as we approach this conversation about trauma today, can you explain, when we use the word trauma, what we mean?
Yeah, so I can tell you what I mean by trauma. And you'd mentioned trauma as a buzzword, and it is kind of a buzzword. We use it almost like a colloquialism or like our vernacular. I was traumatized by that thing. And so I think it'll be helpful to kind of give more of like a clinical frame for it. I'm kind of okay with us using it more because I'd rather us err towards the side of understanding and empathy for one another rather than just brushing it aside. But it is kind of an overused term in a way. But here's the kind of the general, from my clinical perspective, and I am not a trauma researcher, but this is just kind of what I've learned in my 12-ish years being a counselor, is so trauma, when we talk about it, there's really two different kinds of trauma. One, when we think of like a post-traumatic stress disorder kind of diagnosis, comes from what we would consider shock trauma. Shock trauma would be a critical incident, something that happened. Typically, you're experiencing some kind of mortal threat, like bodily threat, or witnessing it for someone else. And the primary experience is fear. And for whatever reason, in that moment, you did not have the resources you needed to cope. And so then your own inner being gets imprinted with a kind of experience of fear. And this happens, can be like a bodily thing that we carry. And that's, could be act of war or an accident or overt abuse, where you get that, like the shock trauma, where what we embody is more fear. There's a longer, slower, formative version of trauma, which is called developmental trauma. And sometimes it'll be called complex trauma. And this is really about from childhood all the way up through your rearing years. If there are key developmental steps that are not met, then we as children will adapt to an overt thing that was maybe unhelpful or something that we were lacking, and we'll adapt to it. And versus a fear, where shock trauma, what we embody is fear. In this place, what we tend to embody is shame. And it starts to form our sense of identity. Because a kid does not have the capacity to understand that they are a good person in a bad situation. There's, what's it called? I'm not so good on my psychological terms. I think it's called primary narcissism. And it's a normal developmental phase for kids. Like they see themselves as the center of the universe. It's normal. All kids do. And so if something's going on that doesn't make sense, or mom and dad are not around, or they're mean or walled off and emotionally, absent, the only way for a child to make sense of that is to turn it inward and go, well, that story is I am not enough. And that is developmental trauma. And then we think that, oh, well, that season of life is over, and now I go into my friendships and our marriages, and it will just, it'll be new, it'll be different. No. We carry these things in our being still. And when we're our worst, less, centered version of ourselves, often what's happening is that something has pinged in us on the outside in our adult life, that at a bodily level, we call it implicit memory. So it's a thing our body knows because it goes, whoa, that feels similar. But our brain may not even realize it. Like you may not realize this thing in you, this moment felt like when dad did X, or when mom did X, or when grandparent or caregiver did X. Or wasn't there for this thing, but something in you will go, ooh, I don't like that, and then you will react. Yeah. And that reaction is what's called an adaptation, and we all do it. It's brilliant. It helps kids survive really difficult things. So we may react or adapt by lots of things, by shutting down and not expressing our emotion, by being a really good caretaker, by being the golden child and doing everything right, by overfunctioning for people, by matching and getting angry and being disruptive, because then we get known and need that way. And so developmental trauma tends to form our personhood, and then our reactions to things. And then shock trauma tends to be these like more acute moments. Both And they can kind of overlap. You can have a series or a lifetime of developmental trauma with moments of shock trauma in it, which then makes doing sort of healing work at times complicated. Yeah. But it will definitely show up in our relationships and how we interact with one another. And so why for me and most people this is just the work in therapy these days. We know that like someone will come in with anxiety or a behavioral issue, or the marriage isn't going well. We've talked about this. Terry Real talks about the couples therapist, who is really fantastic, and he'll say like, look, when you work with a Terry Real trained therapist, we teach you to work with the parts of you that don't want to use the skills. Because your prefrontal cortex knows like, oh, I learned this skill in this book, or I was listening to a sermon, or my therapist said, I'm going to use such and such. But the energy and the stuff you carry in your body, it goes out of your prefrontal cortex. You start living out of more of this like a amygdala hindbrain place, it's survival. And so you're going to react the way that you did largely as a kid, when you're not your best self. On a good day, you're fine. But on a bad day, that's what you're going to do, because that's what you've done for so long.
Yeah.
And so if we really want transformation, we need to do work that is subterranean, to really get in tune, grow an awareness of, compassion for, and help to shift the energy that we carry in our body, which is often a lot of fear, pain, shame, terror.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't understand the level to which they actually are having some level of trauma
Yes.
in
Right.
their lives. And so from, when we talk about, church, and the various skills that we want our like healthy and safe leaders to embody, we can teach them skills, but I think part of the reason why the church has not been safe is that our subterranean work has been lacking.
Yes, that's right.
Because we teach like, here's how you do your pastor thing, or your discipleship thing, or, you lead your small group thing.
Here's how to pray. Here's how to make a disciple. Here's how to live on mission.
Yeah. But
Right.
then when this person makes this comment or brings up this political thing that you don't agree with,
Oh, baby.
what happens in your body? And if you're not attuned to your body, and if you haven't learned how to actually be friends with your body, and learn how to comfort these things that are like a live wire in you, then, I'm no different, but we react out of that because we kind of had to at some point in life.
Yeah.
So when I think of trauma, that's kind of the overview. Maybe I kind of walked it around the barn a little bit.
No.
But what I think it's
good,
Gabor Mate, who is like an addictions and trauma expert, a doctor, he will say that trauma is not the event. Like the event happened, it's gone, it's back there. But it is the impact on us that we carry. It's the wound that we carry. And Bessel van der Kolk, who is kind of like the seminal, I don't know if that's the right word, but he's like the guy who really shifted a lot of this for the field to go like, look, trauma is carried in our bodies. He has a book called The Body Keeps the Score. It's a great book. It's an intense one, so just beware if you check it out. But it is very, very good. And maybe I mentioned this in a later podcast, but he noted in his research, like even if you take like Hurricane Katrina versus 9/11 and look at the instances of trauma after that, he found that there was a difference, and there were two things that made a critical incident manifest as trauma. And those were primarily, not only, but primarily being able to move your body, having some kind of agency to do something with the stress that you're going through, and two, reconnecting with people. And so he would put up these images of 9/11 and Hurricane Katrina and go, what do you notice? And at 9/11, I mean, both of them are chaos. So critical incidents that are very difficult. But in 9/11, he goes, it looks like chaos, and it is, but what you're noticing is people are running and they're on their cell phones. And so they're moving their body, they're doing something with this critical moment, and they're reconnecting with loved ones. And so the rates of trauma or PTSD for a critical moment were actually lower in New York City by quite a bit. I can't remember the actual numbers, as compared to Hurricane Katrina, where this, again, a massive critical incident happened, but people were trapped.
Yeah.
They couldn't move. Often they were isolated on top of roofs or in the Superdome or wherever they were, and they couldn't connect with their loved ones. So you could not connect with your body, and you could not connect with relationships, and then the body tries to survive, and it internalizes something of that stress. And so then we tend to carry it unless we do work to tap into it. So those are kind of two hallmarks that if you can't do something to move your body of agency to work through the stress of the moment, and you can't reconnect with a loved one, the chances of that manifesting as a wound or a hurt or a trauma go up at that point.
Man, we were, a big part of my story. I'll share this
You're
bit
welcome
with
to.
our audience. Like, we were talking about this just the other day. I've always had this curiosity because, okay, so in my late 20s, I was involved in a major accident. Okay. So just by the way, audience, this is a story. This is a trauma story. So, and it involves an accident, a car accident. So take care of yourself, as you hear this. But I was in a car accident with my family on the way to my grandfather's funeral. And it was a rollover accident, and it was really, really awful. And my sister died right next to me, in the back seat, right next to me, with her little girl, her 16-month-old little girl in between us, My dad was in the car. My brother-in-law was in the car. Everyone was life-flighted to area hospitals. My brother-in-law had massive brain, reconstructive surgery. My dad, massive internal bleeding. He lived. My sister was the only one that died in that accident. My little niece barely had a scratch, literally just only a scratch, didn't even whimper through the whole thing. Like, she was so protected by the whole thing. But I saw so much and experienced so much in that thing, yet I was, at that moment in my life, surrounded by people that loved me well. Mm-hmm. And I think, it's been over 20 years ago now that really, really, really horrific thing happened. I miss my sister terribly still to this day, but I don't have a level of PTSD that I thought I maybe would have had, But all along the way, I had these people in my life that relationally showed up for me. I had people to process that thing with. And when I would talk about things, just ruminate, just over and over and over, there were people that were just patient, and they held me and they cared for me.
Dude, what a gift.
Yeah. The point is that I had this, that's probably one of the greatest, pains of my life.
Yeah.
But I have had things that have happened to me relationally in my life that are much less damaging and, by appearance or by, scope, that I've really struggled to get over because I couldn't identify the help that I needed to get through the thing because it was really relationally complex, and I didn't really, I just couldn't identify the help.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, on the other hand, I had this big thing happen and I had the help, and it actually helped me heal, through the experience. But these other seemingly smaller things were bigger, and they have affected me more. It's just been so weird.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
And so one was like shock trauma. So fear could be the primary thing. And it seemed like what you had people that came, that helped, got you out of there. And you had a group of people that helped you process and be relational. So it was a critical moment and a time of grief and a wound. Definitely hurt. And
people held space for that grief, and they grieved with me. And, socially, we know to do that in a moment, in a story like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So when something moves into trauma, it then affects how we show up in the rest part of our life. So just because you have a wound or a hurt or a critical incident doesn't necessarily mean, that's good news, that thing must or needs to manifest itself as trauma. So trauma would then mean that in other areas of your life, you're carrying, you've ingested something of that moment, that your inner world is now kind of attacking itself.
Yeah.
And so then if it's a shock trauma, you may have things like avoidance. I don't want to get in the car again. I don't want to talk about this issue. You may have nightmares, flashbacks, massive mood swings. And these are things that, like, when your environment is pinging on that live wire of the moment. Bessel van der Kolk talks about how specifically, I think, for shock trauma versus complex developmental trauma, but like a momentary moment trauma, when it turns into trauma, that experience is not time-stamped in the brain.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing. Talk about the timestamp thing, like trauma not being timestamped.
Yeah, there's a part of your brain, apparently. I'm going to botch this. Here's I think it's called the Broca's area. of the brain that is responsible for putting things into a narrative and in a timeline. And what they found is that for people who have experienced a shock trauma of some kind, and when they put them in a brain scan and they have them go into this memory or this moment, that part of their brain is offline. And so it has not time-stamped what we call integrated. So generally speaking, for neurological health, integration means health, disintegration means unhealth. And so this is a part of our brain that is disintegrated. So this moment, the felt sense, where you were, the smells, the fear, all of it is alive in a sense in your body and has not been integrated into a larger story. And so when something happens for someone who has a trauma like that, they get into a car again and their whole body goes, oh, no, I can't do this right now. So that's like this area doesn't go, oh, that was a memory, that was a time, that was a place, that was a thing that happened, I'm safe now. And so all trauma work, which is from a therapeutic lens, is taking the implicit, the thing in your body that is not integrated into your narrative and making it explicit. So taking the thing that's known and you carry and you're bringing it and reconnecting it to prefrontal cortex so that it can be reintegrated. And it can become a moment, but not something that's alive in you in the present.
Okay, so we just... Hey everybody, I want to take just a second very quickly to let you know about a couple of things that Tom is doing. First of all, every Monday, Tom sends out an email that he calls Transformation Tips to everybody that has signed up for this email. And I've got to tell you, it is full of wisdom and practical advice on how to experience greater transformation in your life. And, you know, like me, you guys are experiencing Tom's wisdom week after week here on this podcast. And so I would just suggest that you go to pagecounseling.com/tips, pagecounseling.com/tips to get on that email list. And then secondly, if you would like to work with Tom as a client and you are in the Kansas City metro area, go to pagecounseling.com and simply let Tom know that you would like to work with him and get in that pipeline with him. If you'd like to work with Tom virtually, you can do so if you live in the state of Kansas. Also, you can go to pagecounseling.com to learn more about how to work with Tom virtually. But you guys, that's what I have for you. And I just suggest that you guys get in there and get as much of Tom's wisdom as you possibly can. What a gift he is to us.
Present.
Yep. Okay. So we just in leader school. Okay. I keep referencing leader school.
Yeah.
In the podcast here, but leader school, we'll talk more about it later on and actually what it is and how we got here. But we realized after about 10 years of doing house church ministry that was different than program ministry. Program ministry, people come into the room, they sit there, they hear the sermon, they experience the worship, maybe somebody prays for them, but there's no like relational, long-term contact, Bro, you throw a bunch of people into a house and tell them to live life together.
It's an MTV TV show.
Oh man, and they're just gonna bump into each other, and it's like that's a furnace of love, man. And we didn't know, and I think we've probably told this story in the podcast, but we didn't know that when you expose people to that kind of relational intensity, that these areas are going to get really pinged.
Yeah.
And so we learned, like, oh my gosh, man, we need to do a lot more time in leadership development. And so we built Leader School. It was like, hey, the objective of Leader School is to raise up safe, skilled, spirit-filled house church leaders. We're going to talk more about that later on, right? But in the safe category, the thing we aim for is just some self-awareness, Well, what does that look like? That looks like a leader getting in touch with these major themes in their life, right?
Yeah.
And we have a tool that we use called a genogram, and a genogram workbook actually. And in that workbook, there are pages upon pages that lead people through remembering their life's story, the good and the bad, the traditions that bring joy, and then also the moments that really hurt. And then it kind of gets distilled down into narrative scripts. Because of these events, these things that happened, these things that didn't happen, I now have these like scripts running through my mind.
The story
and heart.
that says,
That's
I am not blank.
Yeah, that's right. And then, of course, it all gets mapped out on a genogram page. If you guys don't know what a genogram is, just Google genogram. It's a world, okay? It's like Pandora's box. But basically, it's a family tree. There are symbols and lines. And you can look back over the generations of your family and see broken patterns that exist in the families.
Multi-generational diagram.
Yeah. So what we just did in Leader School just last week was we wrapped up 3 weeks of people sharing their genogram story.
Very cool.
Yeah. So for 3 weeks, people would bring their packet, and one by one in triads, they each had an hour. And at first, they're like, I could not tell my story for an hour. And then after they've done it, they're like, how did I... I need three.
I need a week.
Yeah, exactly. And, like people just open up their genogram workbook and then, they're in charge of the story. We tell them all the time, you are at the driver's seat. You tell what you want to tell. We're not trying to get you to jump off the, vulnerability cliff here. What we are giving you is an opportunity to timestamp some stuff,
Yeah.
And so what's really, really interesting, and we coach our leaders on what it looks like to hold someone's story. Typically, somebody tells a story and then you get all involved in it too quick. It's like, oh, have you read this book? Have you done this thing? You start giving like unsolicited advice and
Getting into
reflection.
fixing.
Yeah. And it's like we teach people like when someone is done sharing their workbook from beginning to end, what they've done is they've just walked you through the mountains and valleys of their life. And if they were willing, they brought like their traumas and they just shared them with people. They've probably never done that before.
It takes immense courage to do
right.
that.
And what we're not going to do is say anything on the other end of that. Mm-hmm. So people go an hour bringing their real life to some trusted friends. And the move after that, we learned this from a friend named Jon Lopnow, is just to say, we're going to hold you now in the tender presence of God. And to just give about 30 seconds or an appropriate amount of time to just basically say to that person, what you just said impacted me. Mm-hmm. I am affected, by what happened to you,
Yeah, it's a way to communicate honor and love. And
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to fill this with my own discomfort or need to make this better for you. I'm just going to go, dang, man.
I'm going to regulate my anxiety that I've got in touch
tough.
with. That's right. I'm going to regulate my own. So I'm going to calm my own central nervous system in response to your story to prefer you and to just say what you just said mattered. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And at the end of that, the group asks the person, like, what do you need now? And then that person could say, well, I could use, whatever it is that they need. I need prayer. I need a hug. I need nothing. I need whatever. And then it's appropriate to say, can I ask a curious question about something or whatever? And what we're finding is just that one experience. It's not all the work, right?
No, it's just a tool, but a good one.
It's not all the work. It's basically just a way to help leaders first get in touch with what's happened, And then we tell them, like, look, what you need to know is that in leadership, everything that has happened in your life is coming through your leadership, So if one of your valleys was getting bullied on the playground when you were 6, and that never got time-stamped, you've never told anybody, you've never really been in touch with how bad that hurt, you didn't have what you needed when you were 6 years old to process what it felt like to be powered up, to be overwhelmed and humiliated by another human being. Well, guess what's going to happen when you're in house church and somebody challenges your theology? They, they're a hard personality and they step forward and they challenge you publicly. Well, we need you to know that 6-year-old little boy is in there,
Yeah.
and he's gonna feel the feels, right? And what we've learned is just to hold trauma as a reality,
Yeah.
so we can take responsibility for it.
That's right. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility.
It's your responsibility. And so what we're not trying to do is create a victimhood culture, right? Where everybody's like, oh, I can't do that because I was traumatized, blah, 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 What we're trying to do is we're trying to create a culture of people who are like, I have to take responsibility for my life.
Yeah.
And my response to my life, and I have to gain an element of maturity to step forward with it and not hide behind it, and not let all of these things become a ceiling for me that I can't break through, you know? But man, we're just learning just the simple power of saying nothing, letting someone tell their story, and to just say to them, that feels big.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry that happened.
Yeah. Having space to just be known like that is so rare.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens in the, therapist office.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you got a therapist who will be quiet enough to actually hear you. Not all therapists are good at it. But man, it's healing. There's this Vietnamese monk who's kind of brought mindfulness to the West, not totally, but in part. And his name's Thich Nhat Hanh, and he has this quote I love. He says, "Deep understanding is the substance of which love is made." And it's like, so deep understanding is the substance of which love is made. Like, if you don't have the capacity to really understand, it's going to be really tough to love that person well, because then you will love the person out of what you think love requires, and then you'll be loving them out of your own stuff, for better or for worse. But if we can give them enough space and then go, how do I love you in this? And it's like, actually, you just hearing me was good. Like, awesome. I'm with you.
Dude, a couple of weeks ago, we were at leader school and we were, I don't even remember what the practice was, to be honest with you at this point, but we were kind of going around the room and everybody was basically like telling about some memories. And there's this friend, like one of our guys, one of our leaders, dude, he stepped forward so bravely with this confession of something that had happened to him in his life and how it was impacting his inability to move forward. And I mean, dude, it was like beautifully brave. And the whole room felt it, And it was so powerful to be in a room of people that, I mean, the move, right? He got done basically sharing his thing. And I just said, hey, and I, called his name and I said, can we just hold that in silence for a second? And he was like, yeah, absolutely, man. And so we were like, all right, dude, we're just going to hold you in the tender embrace of God. And the whole room just held him,
Yeah.
Didn't tell him what to do next. Didn't tell him about a book he should read. Didn't tell him, didn't give him, a number for a therapist. We were like, my gosh, man, that was big, And at the end of that, we just were like, we want you to know that what you just said impacted our hearts tonight. And I got a text from him later on that night, and he said, hey, man, I just want you to know that, like, last night was actually, it was the next morning. He said, last night was huge for me, and I think a profound amount of healing happened in my life in that moment.
Dang, that's amazing.
And it was like, okay, that, again, we're not doing therapy church.
Right.
What we're doing is we're acknowledging the fact that these things have happened, that pain is here in our lives, and it is informing our ability to relate, our ability to move on into God's highest and best for our lives. It it is impacting the way that we experience a church.
Yep.
You know, so like if we went to a church where we did experience some trauma, big T trauma or little T trauma, shock trauma or developmental trauma, you know, and we're sitting in a room and they're using the same words and some of the same elements are present and there's the same kind of leader up front. It's not the same church, but it looks the same, kind of feels the same. Well, what's going to happen? Your central nervous system is going to go crazy because you're like, this is that. And it's like, okay, but it's not that, you know. Give it a chance, maybe. But also, what does it mean for us as a church to understand that people are coming to us with stories?
Yeah.
And when they come to us with stories, we hold those stories, help them timestamp them, not with, you know, excellent therapeutic practice. It's actually way simpler than that. It's just, can we just hold you for a second?
Yeah. I mean, this is, you know, the World Health Organization has, you know, data on this, that just living in a first world country drastically increases your likelihood of having a severe mental illness.
Oh my gosh.
And so that in, you know, kind of third world countries is much more relational, familial, tribal. Mm-hmm. And so if someone has something going on, like the tribe will literally sit around that person until they're done with their thing.
Yeah.
They hold space. Now this is a one-off kind of example, but like we're so individualistic, we're so isolated, and then that means this trauma we're carrying runs amok inside us, and there's no feedback loop. Children develop best. Well, they're not best. This is optimal development means a child borrows a healthy nervous system to learn how to regulate. So for parents, if your kids are bananas and they go nutso sometimes, they're kids. You're not doing anything wrong. And to expect them to operate like an adult is unreasonable. It is our job for us to learn how to calm our nervous system so that they can borrow that. And that borrowing of the nervous system is what lays down neurological pathways of what safety and kindness and trust and resilience feel like.
Yeah.
And so then as they grow up into adulthood, it's not like they have this skill set they learned in a book. It was quite literally modeled to them in a behavior that of, this is how, like if there's a rupture, we come back quickly and we apologize. Like when someone's, you know, disruptive and you're trying to negotiate with them, like you give them space, you back up. And so like these are all skills that we need. And the good news is that in community, even as adults, we can borrow each other's nervous system, like our prefrontal cortex that is a bit more mature, a bit more calm, and it can start to rewire our defaults. And this is, I'm sure you've had this experience, because I have this experience every week where I'll have a new client come in and start to get to know their story, and I inquire about difficulties or trauma, and it is the most, you know, boring kind of answer. I had a great childhood. And I'm like, okay, we'll see. We'll see. And it's not that your parents didn't love you, that they didn't even give you an upgrade in their parenting far beyond what their parents could give them. And like, whose fault? It's nobody's fault. You're not blaming our parents or our grandparents. However, a lot of times people will think of the term trauma and they go, I have not had an accident event. Right. I don't have a shock trauma. Therefore, I don't resonate with this idea of trauma. Well, most of our relational difficulties come from a lack of getting what we needed in some way in childhood. Not because our parents didn't love us to death and give us absolutely everything that they could. Sometimes parents don't. But by and large, parents really try to. It is how we adapt to what we did or didn't get in this developmental years that causes us the most trouble relationally.
Yeah.
And so while doing something like a genogram is really helpful, is that it starts to pull out those relational dynamics where you can go, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I can see it now.
I can see it now.
Yeah.
And then to be able to have it be witnessed by other people where you can borrow their nervous system, and even maybe in a child, if difficult things were not voiced, just being in the room of people and going, my life was difficult and it hurt. like what you're doing is like you're giving a voice to a child that had no idea how to have a voice, and it quite literally starts to change how your brain is wired and how you move forward. It's incredible kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
this is like neuroplasticity stuff.
That's it, yeah.
We're going to talk about that. We have a whole episode for that later on where we get further into all this stuff. But yeah, man, all of this makes me feel like we have such an opportunity.
We do.
We have such an incredible opportunity as a church to learn new skills that actually aren't rocket science, really hard stuff. Because, okay, so the genogram thing, it's like, what are we equipped to do and what are we not equipped to do? We are equipped. We are equipping people to hold space for other people when they hear a big story. We're also equipping them that they don't have to have an answer.
Yeah.
That they can just say, I'm sorry that happened to you. I'm really affected and impacted by your story. And that one thing goes, that's huge, you know, when you're beholding someone's story. But somebody also may bring a confession or bring something that night, or maybe to house church, and it might be out of scope. It's like, you need professional attention.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's the move. So what we're not saying here, again, we're not doing therapy church, right? We're learning that we're learning how to attend to one another and how to be healers.
We're doing what Terry Real calls growing in relational mindfulness.
That's right. That's right. Relational mindfulness. Yeah, I love that, man. Yeah. Well, okay, guys, more to come. More to come in all of this. Tom, thanks for your expertise on this.
Yeah, man. Happy to be with you.
Let's, just because, this is not a bonus episode. This is a real episode.
Real episode. This one counts.
Let's hold some space together today.
So, guys, thank you for being with us on this podcast. And if you're in a space where it's safe for you to kind of reflect a little bit, I'd invite you to do so with us as we hold some space with you. And today I'm just going to invite you to do kind of just a little bit of a meditation. So if you can, and you're in a space where you can stop, I'd invite you to put some stuff down. If you're driving a motorcycle, just save this for later. But what I invite you to do, if you feel comfortable with it, if not, no big deal, just follow along. I invite you to turn your attention to your inner world in your imagination. And I just invite you to let an image come to mind of your heart. And just see what shows up. I'll just give you a couple seconds to see. Don't overthink it, but just see. If your heart were to show up in your mind as an image, what does it look like? Is it full? Is it vibrant? Is it beating? Is it abstract? Does it show up as a movie or a scene? Does it look like an anatomical heart? Is it extreme in any kind of ways? Is it wounded or crusted over or static? And I just invite you, whatever your image looks like, if you can, kind of withhold some judgment and just turn it around. See it from different angles. Is it the same all the way around? Or is it different in different places? And you might just assess the inside of your heart too. Does it feel free and spacious and inviting? Does it feel compartmentalized, closed off, locked down? And if in this practice you notice anything in your heart that feels sort of like an extreme, image, I'd invite you to just ask yourself, as you are aware of how your heart is doing in this image, how do you feel toward your own heart in this moment? And if you feel anything other than compassion, kindness, curiosity, openness, I just invite you to see where in your body do you feel fearful or at odds with your own heart in this moment. And if you can, to ask those parts of you if they're willing to relax a little bit if the fear or the judgment or the I hate this part of my heart, if that stuff can just pause and give you a little bit of space to just be kind and open towards your heart. If so, great. If not, then I invite you to actually just kind of pause at this point and don't move forward. If you don't feel peace to relate to your heart, then don't. Just kind of keep listening. But if you do feel an openness to your own heart, in your own intuition, I just invite you to go, what would you want to say back to your own heart? What of kindness or acknowledgement? Maybe it's, I see that you're hurting. I know that thing that happened. I'm sorry that you're feeling that way. I'm here for you. I'll listen. Whatever it might be, just take a moment to speak something loving back to your own heart. And then, once you've done that, you're welcome to take as much time to just sit and be with your heart, however you would like to be. But then once you're done, you can come back to me and to the room that is around you and whatever it is that you are doing, and be done with this practice. This is just a little way that any given time you can do a quick check-in if you're not quite sure how you're doing, is to just pop into your imagination and ask yourself, how is my heart doing today? And let an image come to mind. And if it feels open and, free and vibrant, then okay, maybe generally your heart's doing well today, great. But if something more visceral shows up in the imagery, that might just be an indicator to you that there's something that needs your attention. And if you have capacity, I'd encourage you to follow up on those things in your own time or with a safe person to just talk through whatever's going on. Thank you guys for being with us. We love being with you, and we'll see you on the next episode.
You guys, thank you so much for dropping in today. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach out to us at gatheringnetwork.org/healthychurchpodcast. It always means so much if you will rate and review the podcast any place where you happen to stream. Credits for today's episode are podcast writers are myself, John Shirley, and Tom Page. Sound design and editing, John Shirley. Show intro music, Light Up the Night by Brasco. Advertisement_track, Well Enough Alone by Reveal. Holding Space _track, Threads by Acreage. And all of these have been licensed through Soundstripe. Once again, we thank you so much for giving us your time today. God bless you, and we'll see you soon.